day.
That sounds like a useful cell phone if you ever
We
needed
didn't
it.
have the need to
If
know
you
what
ever needed
everybody
it,
was
someone's
doing
sneaking up
all the
behind you.
time in their lives.
And then it costs about $5 a minute.
Anyway, social media.
I ain't got much social media either.
Is a real cultural reality today. Okay, give us just a moment, pull up, and pick up where we left off yesterday, and our focus was Hank Willis Thomas. We'll look at the remaining portion of the little clip that I was showing and talking about his conceptual art. I did have chapter 3, 4, and 5 glossary here. If someone still doesn't have it, please come and help yourself. And we are in chapter 3 on page 42. So y'all might want to go ahead and turn there and also get your glossaries out. Handy to have. For chapter 3. This is everyone how's your week going? Okay, it's warming up a bit. Ease our way into July.
42. 42.
God, awful high temperatures of July, maybe avoid some of that going on. continue with the video. It takes me a moment to get the clip pulled up, so just bear with us.
Welcome to the virtual experience of my exhibition, All Things Being Equal, at the Cincinnati Art Museum.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna play this from the start, for a few of you that were not here yesterday. And this, artist is, Hank Willis Thomas. White Imitates Black is the image that we have there on the top of the page. We talked yesterday at length about this piece. We talked about the subject, the form, the content. I asked you to kind of hold your thoughts on the meaning or the content. We have in our notes that this is a work of conceptual art. Another thing I'd like you to write down is that this is also a work of what we call appropriation. Not this particular work, but Hank Willis Thomas and some of the other works that we're gonna see in this clip from the Cincinnati Museum called All Things Being Equal. We're going to look at some of the pieces after the video is over and talk about how he appropriated and was inspired by works of art from the past. So I do want you to put that down as a side note. We talked also yesterday about the fact that many conceptual artists like to use words or phrases, text, if you will, in their artwork, and that we respond to conceptual work differently than we do from other works that demonstrate beautiful color, beautiful modeling, chiaroscuro, or subject matter that we can recognize. This is kind of more of an intellectual instead of a sensual or emotional type of response. So thought-provoking, I shall say. So anyway, let's continue listening to Hank Willis Thomas.
One of the most profound things about having a survey exhibition at this point in my career is I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. And one of the things I've learned more recently is that in many ways artists are psychic or prophetic, especially when you think about conceptual artists who are really trying to take an idea and make it real in the future so that people in the future will help bring new meaning to it and translate it across the world. The significance of the phrase, all things being equal, ... implies that the ability to achieve true balance will always be delicate. When we think about the search and the quest for liberty and justice for all and true equality in our country, the work will never be complete. I Amen is really paying homage to the kind of old guard of the civil rights movement who opened the door for so many of us to even begin to think about what true integration, true equality and opportunity in this country could look like in the 20th century.
Okay, I'm pausing it here for a moment because this is another work that deals with text and words and plays on words, similar to the work, the triptych. That's another fact that you should have in your study guide box about the work in your textbook. White Imitates Black. It's a triptych, 1, 2, 3 parts to it, okay? And obviously there's many more images that go with the entire unified 20 images here, separate works that stand alone, but collectively also work together. And just notice, you know, I am a woman, I am a man, I am, am, I am many, I am human, what a man, I am. reminiscent of A Man I Am. Anybody grow up with Dr. Seuss?
Sam I am.
That's
Green eggs and ham.
You
We used
bet.
to eat that in elementary.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be a man. I am a man. Am I a man? Who's the man? I am 3/5 man. I am the man. So, I am a man.
So put those in our notes, or
I am Mia. No, you don't have to take notes on this. I just want you to understand that one of the things that Hank Willis does is he plays with words and text. Does everybody follow? And there's some common thread that runs through all of these because the whole preface is, I am, right? And as you've heard him speak, even in the preface of this video, is he's still figuring out who he is and what kind of art he wants to make. It's a journey. So it's kind of introspective. And so I mention this because it's a multiple part work, it's a conceptual work, and it poses questions that we can all reflect on. And again, I think quite thought-provoking. Now, of course, Hank Willis Thomas is prefacing this by a conversation about civil rights. All right, so he comes from a particular point of view that may not be our same point of view, but it's kind of universal in some regards. I'm going to back it up just slightly so you can listen to him talk just a bit about it, perhaps the inspiration for this piece.
Guard of the civil rights movement, who opened the door for so many of us to even begin to think about what true integration, true equality and opportunity in this country could look like in the 20th century. When my cousin Sandra was murdered in the year 2000, I obviously was in shock and deep mourning. And for years, my family couldn't afford to buy him a headstone. And I realized if you aren't rich and you aren't famous, the only evidence that you actually lived was through the people whose lives you had an impact on. And in a way, many of us are walking memorials because we carry the spirits of our loved ones who've passed. The Neon Work Remember Me was really inspired directly from a postcard I found of a black person who appeared to be a World War I veteran holding his rifle and wearing his Sunday's best, and said on the back of the postcard, "Remember me." And I think we do often forget about the legacy and the strength and courage of rural African Americans in the early 20th century. Branded is a series of work which was part of my first major creative epiphany, which was the way in which advertising and popular culture really rely on prejudice as a means to sell products. That, especially in the context of marketing, African Americans who are so undervalued in our society, and especially African American men, are very easily and often utilized as a tool to sell products. And in many ways, they become products themselves. And I was really investigating what it means to be the descendant of slaves who are still frequently publicly commodified bodies. My mother, my grandmother, and many of the women in my family were quilters. My aunt Yvonne, so many others really had this deep, rich connection to using old materials to make something that they could pass on to younger generations. And thinking also about the messages that our garments can carry, and especially during the Underground Railroad, where many of the ways in which messages were sent to escaping slaves was through the clothes and often the blankets that were left outside the houses, the safe houses. I wanted to make a connection between the symbolic escape that so few African Americans have when they become a professional athlete to the escape that so few people were able to achieve from slavery. So far, I've done 2 unbranded series. The first was unbranded Reflections in Black by Corporate America from 1968 to 2008. The second was unbranded A Century of White Women from 1915 to 2015. In each series, I chronicle the corporate notion, these identity structures, through looking at real ads and removing all of the advertising information to reveal what's really being sold once you strip away the branding and the text, which are primarily the stereotypes of these people that exist at that time. I love seeing both unbranded series in the same room because they really do complement each other. So many of the ads about Black people and about white women, the overarching majority of them were made by white men who were selling their products so that other white men could become wealthy. And there is a curious connection between the way in which these specific demographics were kind of framed in marginal ways and then given carrots to suggest that the products could be windows or opportunities or doorways to freedom and opportunity. I have been fascinated with history as a tool, as a gateway, as a passport into the future. And so through my art practice, I've often looked at historical objects that I found to be prescient and channeled that energy into artwork that I am still understanding. I've always been fascinated with the photograph as a historical document. I was inspired by the concept of the puncture that Roland Barthes put forth, which is that which pierces you in a photograph, the thing that really sticks out for you. I wanted to kind of take the thing that really stuck out for me, that had a real impact on me viscerally in a photograph, and make that real in sculpture. It's still a form of photographing to me because there's still a level of cropping. There's still this decisive moment, this tension that these sculptures all imply, that I try to kind of embed into every work. The reason I primarily used arms and hands in the Punctum series was because they are what we use to grasp, to hold what we value, what we think is important, what we need at a given moment in time. And sometimes those things are just outside of our grasp that we're reaching for, whether it be a ball, whether it be a goal, whether it be, and each of these works are using the hand gesture as a metaphor for our yearning desire to achieve. I miss being in the darkroom where we were using silver gelatin to bring latent images to the surface on photo paper. The process of making mirror is somewhat like the process of making a photograph in the darkroom, and I wanted to kind of bring that 15th century or earlier alchemy into the 20th century medium of photography, and more specifically photojournalism, looking at historical moments that also include a mirror, puts the viewer in a really fascinating phenomenological relationship with what they're staring at. So when you're looking at one of the mirror works, you're both looking at a historical moment and looking at yourself and constantly trying to reconcile the past and the present. Black Righteous Space is a work that responds to sound and changes a red, black, and green rendering of the Confederate battle flag into a mandala whenever a sound intersects with it. I have really been thinking a lot about how our tone of voice, our words change and shape how we see reality, and been wanting to encourage myself and others to really think about the way in which so much of what we know about especially Black liberation, is through tonal changes in our voice, through music, and through the alchemy of sound and the magic that occurs when we apply the tone of our voice perfectly to the tune of life. All of my work is about framing and context, and I really want viewers of my work to think about their relationship, their unique perspective of what they're looking at. And working with retroreflective material where we're most common seeing on stop signs and highway signs at nighttime that illuminate and orient us as we're traveling, it gives me a way to talk about what else is hidden in the dark of history. I like to use historical images, often lesser seen or lesser recognized, and make images pop into reality, if only for a brief moment, through viewers flashing of a photograph and thinking back about a specific moment. And in a way, those works are really made more by the viewers and their cell phones or their flashlights than they are by me. And that's something that is so beautiful in that it becomes an act of collaboration. I think words are images and images are words. And in my work, I have tried to use both photographic images by and large and text as pendulums where what they mean and what they're saying can switch right before our eyes depending on our understanding of who we are, where we are, and what the artist is trying to say. Much like the truth, my understanding of reality has changed with more information, and I hope that the work continues to walk that delicate balance between fact and fiction.
That gives you a little further insight to just the mind of this artist. Very impressed with
To using old materials to
very impressed with Hank Willis Thomas and his breadth and scope as an artist, his expertise with multiple media, including photography, including sound, and video, and bronze. He's a sculptor, he's a photographer, he's many things. He is a very strong visual communicator, I think. And anyway, I'm very intrigued by his art. And so I just wanted you to see a little bit more. At the very end there, we saw pieces that were similar to the one in our book. Art imitates life. You saw the lenticular surface of a couple of those pieces there at the end. Again, words are images and images are words. You heard him articulate about his use of words in his art. And another thing I'd like to focus on, again, his sculpture. And here's just an example of one of the pieces here, where we see the arms, using body parts and using hands and arms to communicate ideas. And of course, many of these sculptures had to do with the expertise, if you will, of Black athletes, whether it be basketball or football. And you saw the Nike. Y'all remember seeing on that photograph the Nike symbol that was like a scarification on the side of that gentleman's head. He's a thinker. This guy thinks a lot about the role of who he is in society, the role of him as a Black person in society and their legacy throughout history. I think he's very, very successful at provoking thought without being overly critical or antagonistic, but at least putting ideas out there about civil rights, about questioning, you know, all things being equal. I mean, that's an issue that we continue to struggle with today. Equality and, you know, diversity and all of the inclusion and all of those buzzwords today. So I'm really a fan of Hank Willis. Thomas, I want to share with you, I've stopped the video at a particular place, and here we have this quilt. He talked about the tradition, the legacy of his grandmother and perhaps his mother saving fabric scraps and making quilts, that age-old tradition. He connected this, do y'all remember what he connected this back to?
It was a way of communicating. Slaves used to communicate through the quilts. It would give them instructions on how to escape and how to, you know, go about their business as it pertains to the Underground Railroad.
Yes,
It's
so
a
if
means
you,
of communication.
yeah, so if you've studied whatever history course you were required to take or did choose to take, if you studied about the Underground Railroad and the safe houses, they were very clever about using objects of utility like quilts for warmth, but codifying those with messages, instructions, maps, etc. I mean, pretty clever. So he's connecting to his past always, while reflecting also on contemporary times. And here we have this huge quilt made up of, what's the media?
Sports teams.
Yes, sports teams. So what do you think he selected to use for fabric, the jerseys and the branding of the sports teams? Anybody have a thought about that?
I think he's probably looking at the exploitation of it. Because probably all athletes, but particularly like African American athletes, feel like if they make it to that point that they're to any of those teams on there, that they've actually made it. But in essence, like to me, it's an equivalent to the auction block. When it comes to like the combines, like you go out there and display what you can do and all of that. They measure you and see how big you are and, you know, nice, you know, thoroughbred guy here. Like, so I see it as exploitation.
Yes, he's making an analogy, you know, I mean, why is it that most of our upper echelon, I mean, when you get to the NBA or the, you know, National Football League or whatever, I mean, there is no higher level, right? Maybe Olympics, whatever. But, you know, if you look at the makeup of most of these high echelon sports teams, there is no doubt the majority of them are black athletes. And that's, you know, there's a lot of reason for that. You can look at that in a lot of different ways. I mean, if you just think about the DNA, and you think about, you know, they didn't put on the auction block weak and struggling specimens, right? They were the best specimens. We have just even geographically even and biologically, lots of very strong black athletes, male and female. And they make it to the top. They work hard, and they are, in many ways, you know, you can't complain about working hard and then being very well rewarded for your work. I mean, if you look at the salaries of a lot of these athletes, but there is the flip side, which I think that Hank Willis is exploring, and you know, films have been made. One of the ones that comes to mind is Show Me the Money, right? With Tom Cruise being that agent. That's a while back.
But it's called, it's not Show Me the Money, it's called,
Well, the black athlete played by,
Cooper Gooding Jr.
yes, that was his phrase, show me the money, right? Well, his agent, which was Tom Cruise, he never seen the movie. It's very entertaining. It's very true about what goes on in the draft, what goes on in an agent and how they can make or break an athlete, you know, in terms of sponsoring them and making connections for them and, you know, paving their career for them. So this has been examined, and Hank Willis is, of course, examining what, you know, the branding, the success of being able to make it to that level athletically. And of course, that goes across the board, whether you're white, black, Asian, whatever. You're gonna be paid well, and along with that comes celebrity, comes status, comes great wealth that some people handle better than others. And so if you wanna call it success or exploitation, their ship came in. They bought fine houses for their mothers. They were able to do fine things for their families. So I don't know how people can complain too much, you know, because what other profession would allow you to realize that kind of success? But it's at a cost, right? So the flip side, and of course most professional athletes have a pretty short career as an athlete. 10 years is a big deal, right? We see exceptions like Tom Brady and others. But, you know, they have classes that athletes go to learn how to invest their money and not blow it and, you know, end up with nothing. It's just it's an interesting world, this world of professional athletics. And then also the thin line you walk in terms of exploitation or opportunity. And so I find it fascinating. Now, this particular work, this is a photograph. You can see the quilting, and you can see shapes. Can you all see shapes? And you can, of course, recognize numbers and banners and color relationships. It's full of color. It says we're on a chapter on color. I mean, it's like got almost every color on the color wheel. Yellow, red, and blue. We've got violet, and we've got green, and we've got, you know, a good representation of warm and cool colors that are very bold. And we have, again, as we look across this, we can almost see symbols like a light bulb shedding light. We see maybe the silhouette of a bull. Can y'all recognize any other figures or objects? How about here?
Looks like a fan.
Okay, it's a person, arms upraised, head rocked back, mouth gaping open. What does that represent?
He's taking the charge every He's taking the charge. When they drive to the basket, he holds their hands up like that.
Okay, so it's reminiscent of trying to dunk the basketball or something. But we also see maybe a prone figure here. Notice the arm and the head and the upraised hand. We see another figure with the head rocked back and the arms splayed out. If you really start looking, we see violence. We see symbols representing maybe a scream, expressions of horror possibly. And we see a lot of diagonality. We see the horse here. If you've ever listened to a horse scream, it's not something you want to listen to. So the wide open gaping mouths do not usually represent how we behave when we're calm and serene. Would you agree? Okay, so these are little clues that give us more than meets the eye. So here's where I want to stop and share with you how Hank Willis Thomas has used appropriation. He did not invent this composition. This was not his original composition. So bear with me a moment. We're going to switch gears. back in time travel. In time, back to 1937. And we've got quite a collection of different videos that we can view. So let's pick one.
Have you ever seen a painting that echoes the screams of humanity? A painting so dark and disturbing that it will stick with you forever. If not, then you need to see Guernica. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the iconic masterpiece by Pablo Picasso. We'll explore its dark and disturbing imagery, and try to understand what Picasso was trying to say with this powerful work of art. At first glance, this painting might look like a distorted scene from a war movie. But no, that is not the case. This is what happened on April 26, 1937, when the German Air Force attacked the town of Guernica in the Basque region of Spain during the Civil War. The bombing was carried out by the order of General Franco, who wanted to defeat the Republican government and its supporters. The town was devastated by the 3-hour raid, which killed or injured 1 out of every 3 people living there. The famous Spanish painter Pablo Picasso, who lived in Paris then, was shocked and outraged when he learned of the terrible attack on the Basque town of Guernica by the German Air Force in 1937 during the Civil War. He could not find words to express his feelings about the cruelty of Franco and his allies, so he decided to use his art as a way to protest against them. The Spanish Republican government asked him to make a mural for their pavilion at the 1937 Paris World's Fair, and that is how this timeless masterpiece came into creation. Now that we know what inspired it, let's move to the details of the painting and what they mean. Guernica is a large oil painting on canvas that measures 3.49 meters or 11 feet and 5 inches length and is 7.76 meters or 25 feet and 6 inches wide. It is painted only in shades of gray, black, and white, creating a stark contrast between light and dark. It is composed of several figures and objects that are distorted and fragmented by Picasso's characteristic Cubist style. It is a complex and chaotic scene that conveys a sense of pain, suffering, and violence that the people suffer due to the attack. If we pay attention to the details of the painting, we can see that it is divided into 3 parts: the left side, the center, and the right. On the left section, we see a bull standing over a woman who holds her dead child in her arms. Standing above her, there is a bull. The bull is a traditional motif in Spanish culture and art, often associated with strength, courage, and masculinity. However, in Guernica, the bull also represents the brutality and oppression of the fascist forces that armed the town. The woman, on the other hand, symbolizes the grief and despair of the innocent victims, especially the mothers who lost their children in the attack. Her face is distorted by pain and anguish as she screams to the heavens. In the central space of the artwork, we see a horse that has been stabbed by a spear and is falling to the ground. The horse is another emblem of Spain and its people, but also of freedom and dignity. The wound on its side suggests that its heart has been pierced by violence and that it is dying. Its mouth is open in a shriek that resonates with the woman's cry. And finally, on the right side of the painting, there appears to be a woman holding a lamp. She is emerging from a window or door. She holds a lamp that casts a faint light on the scene, indicating a possible way out or a glimmer of hope. The lamp is also a symbol of enlightenment and truth, but it is contrasted by a large light bulb, shaped like an eye that hangs above the horse's head. The light bulb that resembles an eye is an iconic reference to technology and progress, which are used for destructive purposes instead of beneficial ones. It also seems to be observing everything from above, as if it were a witness or judge. There are also several other significant elements in the painting that add to its meaning and impact. For instance, the soldier whose body is torn apart by a bomb, a bird that flies above him that could be seen as a sign of peace or freedom, and a woman who flees from the flames with her arms raised. There is also another woman who is trapped under a collapsing building. That is not all, though. In addition to these elements, we can see that flowers sprout from the soldier's hand as a sign of life and hope, and there are distinct geometric shapes that create a sense of movement or tension. Another interesting detail of this artwork is that there are certain words and sentences written or painted on some of the figures or objects, creating a sense of intrigue and mystery in the painting. However, even though many critics disagree, this painting is not supposed to be a literal or realistic depiction of the incident. It was also intended to be symbolic and expressive. The purpose it serves is to evoke an emotional response in the viewer. to make them feel what Picasso felt when he learned about the bombing. Anger, sadness, horror, and compassion. But if that's all Picasso wanted to convey through his artwork, why is it considered as such a controversial piece? Well, there are several reasons for that. The painting has been both praised and criticized over the course of history. One of the reasons why some people took it so badly could be that when it was first exhibited at the Paris World's Fair in 1937, a lot of people ignored its political message and merely saw it as a powerful protest against war and fascism, considering it as a propaganda or interference in Spain's affairs. There were others who even dismissed it as ugly or incomprehensible. But at the same time, there were many artists who were inspired by Picasso's work and considered him a role model. For instance, René Magritte, a Belgian surrealist painter who painted a glass key, a portrait of Picasso holding a key that symbolized his role as a leader of modern art and a defender of freedom. After the World Fair, Guernica became a powerful symbol of the anti-war movement and the plight of the Spanish people after it was exhibited in various countries, raising awareness and funds for the Spanish Republican cause. However, it also faced opposition and attacks from those who disagreed with its message or its creator. For example, in 1939, it was hidden behind a curtain at the Museum of Modern Art in New York to prevent offending the German ambassador. In 1974, it was vandalized by a protester who wrote "Kill Lies All" on it with spray paint. The controversy over this painting did not end with the Spanish Civil War or even World War II. It continued for decades, especially with respect to its ownership and location. Picasso had entrusted the painting to the Museum of Modern Art in New York until democracy was restored in Spain. However, due to his tragic death in 1973, before Franco's dictatorship ended in 1975, his heirs and the Spanish government entered into a long, complicated negotiation over the return of Guernica to Spain. Guernica was a source of both pride and pain for the two sides of the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Republicans and their allies saw it as a symbol of their fight and sacrifice for democracy and freedom. Franco and his supporters saw it as a symbol of their loss and shame by the international community. Both sides wanted to own and display the painting, but they could not agree on how or when. It took 6 years from 1975 to 1981 to negotiate an agreement after Spain had become a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy. The painting was moved from New York to Madrid on September 10, 1981, with tight security and media coverage. Some people welcomed it as a national treasure and a symbol of peace, while others rejected it as a foreign intrusion and a symbol of conflict. It was first shown at the Casa del Buonretiro, an extension of the Prado Museum, where Picasso had been the honorary director in exile. In 1992, it was relocated to its final place at the Reina Sofia Museum, where it is now. This painting undoubtedly is a timeless and universal message that resonates with people across the world and across history. It serves as a painful reminder of the horrors of war and the consequences it has on the people even long after it is over. While supporting the claim of the needlessness of war, it also challenges the viewer to question the motives and consequences of war and to empathize with the victims. Click on any of the two videos on the screen right now for more content.
Okay, trying to get back to our PowerPoint. And the work that we are studying. Okay. Once again, Hank Willis Thomas, we learned a little bit about him in relation to his other uses of media. And I think we can all come away with the appreciation that he is very thought-provoking in his art. He wants you to think, he wants you to examine, and his use of words as images and images as words. The work that we focused on quilt. I just wanted you to see the similarities, compositional appropriation, and how he took this highly controversial work that has now found its way back to Spain, that was created by Picasso as a result of this horrific injustice that occurred in Picasso's own home country, which is Spain. And if you're not familiar with the Spanish Republic Civil War that took place there, and all the atrocities and the senseless bombing of this little town in Spain, stuff happens, you know. I mean, ridiculous, horrific, senseless death occurs probably in every war and every conflict, but Picasso really had been procrastinating, if you want to know the truth. He had been given a commission by the Spanish government in 1937 to create a mural for the World Exposition that would be held there. And he had really, I guess, not found inspiration to create the mural yet, and then this occurred, and that set him off. He worked nonstop on this for a period of time, made some strong design decisions. We've been studying value most recently, high key, mid key, low key, and he created a work unlike Hank Willis Thomas, devoid of color, purposely, to make this more documentary-like, you know, reading a newspaper. Interestingly, after it debuted at the World Exposition there in 1937, it toured the world. This large painting, 25 feet in length, almost 12 feet in height, was taken and exhibited throughout the world, and was a very powerful, obviously powerful protest against war, but many, many levels, pros and cons, in terms of how the public has received this painting through the years. And so Guernica and Hank Willis Thomas's homage to Picasso and Cubism and the whole composition and the storyline of Guernica in relation to how he is viewing, you know, the branding of the different sports and different athletic teams. It's kind of a very interesting comparison if you think about it. It might seem like quite a jump to you, knowing the horror of Guernica and having it compared to what Hank Willis Thomas has done. But when you start to connect the dots and the threads, I've not heard him talk at length about all of the hidden meaning and why he appropriated that particular painting. But I can speculate, and it would be an interesting conversation. So, knowing now about Guernica might give you, of course, greater understanding of what he did with his quilt using those sports jerseys. Okay, so I think a real provocative artist, a real thought-provoking artist, and before we leave today, I want to also share with you one of the things I really like about Hank Willis Thomas is how he uses the media of sculpture and isolating the arms and the hands and the heads, which we know are most expressive parts of our body, really. And just received not long ago my Art Education magazine. I want to pass this around in a few minutes. But Hank Willis is featured in here. As one of the artists whose work is featured at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama. So let's take a look, and then I'll share with you the magazine. do better than this.
The Memorial for Peace and Justice. We just walked through, and I feel emotionally overwhelmed.
I've been here over 20 times, and every time I'm teary and emotional, but in a good way. Because in those emotions, I'm able to feel and do what the memorials intend, to have an inner peace, but also a way to go forward and heal on this unspoken history in a way that honors the people who were the victims of lynching.
When I grew up, lynching was almost never spoken about, and it is America's great shame.
I heard some of it growing up in an African American family. They used lynching as a way to educate us as children of what not to do. When it was taught in schools in Massachusetts, as where I grew up in the Boston area, it was individual actors. It wasn't seen as widespread. And this memorial shows it was political. It was violence that was widespread in almost every state of the United States except for a handful. And that becomes very clear as you walk through this memorial.
Walking through, starting at the top of the hill and winding down through a descending ramp so that these large Corten steel memorials begin to hang over your head, one after another, multiplying.
You're going through the cycle of a lynching, from the person while they were still alive and upright and at eye level to when they are strung up and over your head, and all you see at the base is the county, and then at the end when they're laid out in coffin-like style, giving them the dignity and a burial that they never had, and it gets overwhelming when you see nothing but bottoms of the pieces and you no longer can see the names.
And that idea that this memorial is offering a kind of solace, offering a kind of funerary honor that these people had never been afforded is so moving. It feels to me that it has come too late, but I'm grateful that it has come at all.
They were not these unknown men, women, and children. They were fathers, they were mothers, and the crimes that they were accused of. A man, a minister, marrying someone is the reason why he was killed. Military veteran returning back from the Spanish-American War, killed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. A husband, his family was killed because he voted. People came back to the house, killed his mother, his wife, and 2 children. It becomes clear that they were people. They were community members. And in death, they still deserve honor.
Lynching was a tool of oppression. It was a tool to subjugate, to maintain the surveillance, terrorizing slave state that had existed before the war.
It's the ultimate form of what Caritha Mitchell calls know your place aggression. If you go outside your place for organizing a union, you could be killed. If you were to vote, you could be killed. If you were reprimanding children to get them to stop throwing rocks at you, you were lynched. It was the way to keep people submissive. But what I found telling is when you have more than one person killed on a day, around election times for voting, around labor organizing, and you have not one person, but 5 people, 10 people, 20 people.
Or entire communities that are attacked and burned.
Like Elaine, Arkansas, and the Tulsa massacre. This is a way to protect a system of white supremacy with political violence, with political intent.
So the challenge was, how do you take that history of terror and translate that through architecture, through memorial sculpture, into something that is meaningful in the 21st century?
And this is the brilliance of this memorial. You are just settled with the name and the date. And even when not known, unknown as a name, you get a history lesson in a way that you could then have deeper conversations that you would not have before. And that's why this memorial is striking and why it's bringing both peace for a community to heal, but also justice for the victims of this heinous crime. Ida B. Wells says that this was the national crime, and we need to acknowledge it as a nation.
And when I was walking through, looking at the justifications of why people were lynched, especially at those that were murdered because they had voted, it's hard not to look at contemporary politics and the efforts to suppress voting now. And this is not history in a sense. This is part of a continuing legacy.
And that's one of the things, a continuing legacy of resistance and refusal to accept one's place, and the understanding that the ballot matters the most. and why it's dangerous to be educated and to be politically savvy. And those are why we're having these debates now over voting rights, but also what gets taught in the classroom. Because lynching was not taught in the classroom. And when you see it as not a one-off thing, but a long legacy in history, it becomes different in the present.
Walking up to one of these rectangular forms, they function as abstract human bodies, but also as grave markers and transform that figure into a remembrance.
The families behind those names never forgot. And one of the most striking walls says, "We will remember." Families remembered, communities remembered. That refusal, that act, is one of the reasons why we can have this memorial, because it went from safe spaces within the Black community to now national conversation.
The research and outreach to those families to gather those memories and bring them together here.
This wasn't unknowable. Families had this, but also newspapers documented these. Government reports and politicians used this and openly discussed this. So there's an acknowledgement of the families who never forgot and never got that healing, that they too can heal, not just the nation. And that what they did in this counteract of commemoration in scrapbooks and family diaries was valid. And that concern is now shaping the national conversations of what do we do now.
What I'd like to show, and we did get a nice education there about this particular memorial, but I really wanted to show some of the different sculptural works that are there on the site that we did not see. These are different art installations, and who's the artist? Can you recognize?
St. Louis.
Yes, it's Hank Willis Thomas. And we've got not only Hank Willis Thomas, but other contemporary sculptors. This is also a very strong image that we can see from several different viewpoints. I think they're self-explanatory. These are bronze. We're going to soon be studying sculpture and the technique of casting bronze, and which is still a very serious media for art making today, and as ancient as the Greeks. So very, very long-lasting, permanent art form, and very powerful in terms of memorial art, as we saw there, and featured work of Hank Willis Thomas, which I'm trying to get back to, but I can't seem to do it. That got my attention as I opened my magazine. I'll just pass this around. It shows it's called Bending Toward Justice. This is Art Education magazine, part of the National Art Educators Association. So on the cover, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, that's Hank Willis Thomas. And how did I know? Because no other sculptor that I have seen has cropped using hands and arms and heads and presented them in this manner. That is unique to this particular sculptor. So it got my attention right away. Some of the other pieces are not by Hank Willis, but by other contemporary sculptors, as you can see here. So it's gonna be on my bucket list to go to Montgomery and see this memorial museum. A lot of artists today create art. It's a whole new category of art. If you've been to Washington, D.C., who's been there? You went to the memorials, didn't you?
with a couple
Korean
of them.
Memorial with all of its bronze sculptures of those Korean soldiers that are a little bit larger than life, shown, if you wanna look through. What's another memorial someone has visited in DC? Yes,
I visited the Holocaust one. That one was pretty sad.
Holocaust, the Vietnam Memorial, World War I, World War II, and now a lot of artists participate in social issues that matter to them. And so we have Maya Lin, who was a young Asian woman, who was selected to create the Vietnam Memorial, which, you know, if you haven't been to Washington, D.C., you might have seen the traveling memorial that goes around the country. But memorial art, as we look at Hank Willis Thomas and we look at some of the issues and causes that he addresses in his art, obviously was invited to have his installation at Montgomery because he is a very progressive and notable conceptual artist. And anyhow, I was not familiar with that new memorial that is being featured in the magazine in Montgomery. But, you know, a terrible thing to think about, but a part of the reality of almost every single state in the United States, this tradition of lynching. Not only black men, but also women and children. And not just black men, but white people also were lynched. And all about trying to control. And you saw the variety of reasons these injustices occurred, but you know, it's kind of a dark topic, just like Guernica is a dark topic, but not all art is about things that are happy and gay. You know, art reflects life, and life is not always pretty, is it? So I'm just trying to give you a clue and a broader look at this contemporary artist who we were introduced to with his work of White Imitates Black. Now, obviously we've spent an awful lot of time on this one artist, and we can't do that all the time, but I just sometimes like to stop and smell the roses in relation to works that I think would be very insightful and maybe long-lasting for you. All right, so we have about 15 minutes left today, and a little bit less than 15 minutes. But we've learned about value, we've learned about high, mid, low-key value, we've learned about signage and using conceptual art and words and images as words. Here we have another artist, David Salle, whose work is very dependent on value patterns. It's not a triptych like we saw with Hank Willis Thomas. It's a diptych. And so when you've got two pieces that are connected together and meant to be viewed as one, it's called a diptych. You want to write that in the box by the picture. And this is entitled Angel. David Salle is the artist, and it's large. It's 72 by 96 inches. And we've got two parts that we can see. I'm going to put them together side by side. And as we look at this as a whole, we can appreciate the fact that this side, yes.
What did you say this artist, this art is? A diptych?
A diptych, D-I-P, diptych, D-I-P-T-Y-C-H. Two parts. So it's two separate canvases put together, okay?
So it's not just one canvas?
No,
with
it's
all
not
the-
one canvas, it's two separate canvases that have been butted up together. If we were viewing this in its location, we would see the separation, okay? And we can enjoy them separately. But as we look at them holistically, we see bright and dull. I think that probably would be the description. As we look at the left-hand side, and we consider the title, Somebody tell me what's going on here. It's taking place. This is a narrative. What's happening?
Looks like they're fishing.
Okay? Are they both fishing?
No, just the
Fish.
guy.
Okay, so if we talk about the subject of what? Tell me what you see.
Guy giving the fish to the woman and the very interesting tree or trellis of the tree.
Actually, they're done fishing.
Yeah, they're done fishing. But we have a couple in an outdoor setting by a stream with mountains in the background. As we learn to be descriptive with our words, we know that there's more than just fish. We see a setting. We see this is not Florida. I mean, we've got mountains in the background, maybe, and we see the rocky stream.
So basically, he like bragging about the fish that he caught.
Oh yeah, and what's she doing?
She's just like, oh my God, get it out of me.
Get it off of
my
me.
face.
I've got my pretty clothes on. I don't want a slimy fish splashing water all over me, right? All right, so it is what it is. It's flat, it's graphic, it's colorful. And notice the color is at full intensity, right? We've got bright red, fire engine red. We've got beautiful pure blue with different variations of blue and green. It's entitled Angel. And is love in the air? Love is in the air.
There's a heart on the top of the tree.
Okay.
So the subject is love.
Yeah, times are happy. The color is upbeat. This is a leisurely activity. And, you know, the color is very emotive. These are happy colors. And then we have the symbols of the heart here. And the preponderance of this positive shape that you see in this painting is red. There's a lot of red and pink, right? In February, what do you see everywhere?
Pink.
And red. And Valentine's. And red is a big color, right? Red is emotive for love. Red is probably the strongest color representing love. Red can also represent anger. But in this scenario, we see that love is in the air and all is well, and we've caught a fish, we're showing it off, and we're courting our sweetheart. You know, we could probably add a few other bits of detail here.
So it's the subject love.
Well, the title is Angel. Okay, so we can all interpret this in our own way. But yeah, I think that this particular part of the canvas has a lot to do with love. And then we, of course, are confronted with this side of the canvas. So let's try to read what's going on here. Is this as easy to figure out?
No.
All right, let me get the lights down so we can really look. See what we can see.
It looks to be a figure by a tree and there's a river of some sort.
Okay, anybody else want to share what they see?
Looks like it's a ghost of a woman.
A ghost of a woman. Y'all see it? Do you see the contour line? And her arm is here. And then overlaid across the profile of her face, we see this kind of ghost-like apparition behind her. Y'all see that? Do we see the fishing pole?
Yes, off to the left.
Okay. So something's happened.
Looks like a bone.
Yeah, there's some strange organic shapes and contour lines that are drawn. They're very ghost-like, right? Like apparitions, not clear, amorphous type shapes, right? We can't quite make sense of. And what about the color?
Low saturation.
Very low saturation. It's dark, it's dull, it might be depressing to some of you. It certainly doesn't have the connotation that we saw in the other half of the canvas, does it? something's gone wrong. And the painting in its entirety is entitled Angel. So,
So maybe the first painting is the relationship, and then maybe the woman passed away, and he goes back to that location to reminisce of it.
yeah, something sad has occurred, right?
Yeah.
A loss has occurred. And so we have this huge contrast between bright and dull, between happy and sad. So the way we read this is because of the value patterns that are representing. Value patterns are easier to read here, would you agree? Okay, because the contrast of the shapes, the edges of the shapes are clear, and the colors are bright and have strong contrast. Here, everything's been diluted. The color is not real solid and opaque. It's kind of like a wash. And there isn't any brightness. The colors have been muted and dulled. And that makes us feel differently. So it's very conceptual work. David Sally, again, is a contemporary artist, and he is communicating with a title called Angel. And we have various ways that we can interpret this. But the author wants you to know about value pattern, basically. Clear, bright, high contrast value pattern, and very subtle value pattern. Now, that brings us to another list I want you to write down as we start talking about color and using these adjectives and descriptions. This is going to be 3 points bonus, and it is essential that you understand when we talk about color, there's only 3 ways that you can talk about color. And to appropriately or thoroughly discuss color, it can be in a photograph, it can be in a painting, it can be in this room, it can be out of doors. You must address the 3 properties of every color. Number 1 is hue. Hue is the given name of the color and its position on the color wheel. Okay? Yellow hue. Yellow is at high noon on the color wheel. It's always at the top in a color wheel model, because yellow is the lightest and brightest of any of the other hues. Just like we discussed yesterday, that if you go outside at 12 noon, about the time we get dismissed from class, you got as much light as you're going to get for the day at 12 noon, high noon, right? Value. Color has value. Yellow is light, and violet is dark. As we look around that 12-hue color wheel, not all colors have the same value, and we just saw that clearly demonstrated in this. You know, the yellow is lighter, the red is darker, the green is darker in relation to the pure value of a single color. Thirdly, and we talk a great deal about this, saturation or intensity. Those are synonyms, they mean the same thing. And we talked about the very intense color that David Sally is painting with the image on the right with the fish. And then we talked about the low intensity or the low saturation on, the left is the bright, and then the right is the dull. So it has to do with not the lightness or darkness of a color, but the brightness or dullness. So hue is the location and the name. Value is lightness or darkness. Intensity or saturation is brightness or dullness. Does that make sense? So anything that we see in relation to color, we can describe based on those 3 things. We name the hue, we say how light or dark it is in terms of value, and then we identify how bright or dull it is. And that is what an artist does. Think about it. You've got your palette, your painting tabaret, your palette, where you're gonna mix your paints. You're looking at your subject, and you've got all of your paints on the edge of that palette. And when an artist starts mixing and picking and choosing and mixing in the center, they're saying, what is the hue? What is the value of the hue? Do I need to add white or black? What is the intensity of the hue? Do I need to knock down the intensity of it by dulling it with its complement or with black? You follow me? It's a dance. It's a dance that an artist is engaged in with a brush when they have color, and then they are trying to replicate something. They have to say, what is the hue? What is the value? What is the intensity? If they're trying to represent something they see and wanting to do it objectively, or even subjectively, okay? So we'll close class there today with our discussion about the 3 physical properties of color. It's Thursday, we have a long weekend, some of us. I'll see you all Monday in class. Be working ahead in your study guide. You have the chapter 3 study guide already, because it was part of 1 and 2. And I will make certain that the 4 and 5 template is available so that you can open it up and start finding your facts. Okay, yes?
So I may not be able to be here on Tuesday the 18th. My dad provides my transportation, and he has a conflict with his appointment. I'm trying to find like someone else who can drive me, but
Okay. Well, by then you'll know where we are. You'll be here on Monday though.
right.
Okay, well then I'll try to give you a heads up on what we'll cover the next day. Okay? And I need Jack and Logan. I know you turned in a study guide, you didn't? I'm missing, I've got everything posted on Blackboard, and I was missing, I just wanna make sure Logan, did you submit a study guide?
The blackboard?
No, to me.
Yeah, I gave it to you on paper, you graded it.
Yeah, I need you to come tell me what your grade is, because I did not mark it down. And I wanna give you credit, okay? And, I think that's it. Y'all have a great afternoon. If you have a makeup test, the art building is where we will be doing it. Okay, I got you. So write it down and I'll put it in Blackboard. Thank you.
No problem. Exactly.
Well,
They just need to get a different.
all the hues on a color wheel are at pure full saturation, okay? That green t-shirt you're wearing, okay? That was once bright green, like St. Patrick's Day green, right? To make that color, the artist put red and possibly black, because red dulls the intensity of green, makes it sappy green like that. And then to darken it further, you can add black as well. So we'll talk about how to change the intensity of the colors. You can put its complement, you can put black, you can put black, you can put white, or you can put black and white. There's really 4 ways.
White also dulls the.
It dulls the intensity. Red plus white equals pink, right? So, but, you know, in nature, when we look outside, we usually don't see real pure colors because they're reflecting off of each other. So the kind of orangey, brownish rocks that we see out there, that's not pure orange. That's had, you know, some blue put into it to come up with those rusty colors, the color of your hair. If I were trying to mix that, I'd have orange, I'd have blue, I'd have a little black to come up with that kind of a rust color, you know? So that's what we teach. That's what I teach in color theory, is how to change color. How to make it light, bright, dull, how to make it match what you see. That's a skill that artists build, but the main way to change a color is to put its complement with it. And I'm gonna show y'all some things on Monday that will blow your mind. I'm gonna bring some of my color plates that the color students create. It shows all these different mixtures from just 2 complementary colors. and what can be done with that by mixing them into each other at varying degrees and all the interesting neutrals that you can get.
My friend's an artist, but he does digital art, so I know like if he just wants high saturation, he just goes to like that.
Yeah, when you're on a
built-in.
computer, you got this little thing you move around.
Yes.
But you have to theoretically know what you really have to know color theory to use those tools properly. You know, you can hunt and peck around, but it's good to know when you're looking at a little menu of little color squares, how to go up in value, down in value, how to brighten the color or dull the color. You know, it's kind of an experimental thing, actually.
Yeah, I just didn't know. So the artist with I forget the palette thing. You just start out with that ice of the saturation.
Right, when you squeeze
then-
paint out of the tube, and you've got the 12 hues in that color wheel, you know, today artists don't have to just rely on just those 12. You can go and buy, you can buy hundreds of tubes of paint that have already been diluted. But if you only have the 12 at their pure state, what we teach our students to do, and I only let them use 3 tubes of paint, yellow, blue, red, and then they have to come up with all of these residual mixtures. That's what I'm gonna show you on Monday.
That sounds a bit complicated.
It is complicated. It's, if you're a musician and you study music theory, you learn how to take a single note and multiply it and put it on a score of music and change the beat and the timing and change it from a half note to a whole note to a quarter note and maybe give yourself 2 other notes and then come up with a melody. It's a variation on a theme, right? So musicians study music theory to know how to arrange notes and change the key, minor, major, change the harmony. Artists working with color do the same thing. They study the theoretical use of color so that they know how to really use it in lots of different ways, not just 1 or 2 ways. You know, a lot of us can use color intuitively, just like our own subjective way, but an artist needs to be able to know how to get away from that into saying other things and exploring other palettes. So that's why we put them, I call it boot camp for painting. When they take my color theory course, they come out the other side knowing how to mix color, let me tell you. And then how to apply it too. So anyway, I'll share some of that information with you on Monday.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too.
So I have a question about this sheet right here.
Yes. These are the compositional structures that we've been studying. You'll notice, we've already talked about the grid.
Yeah.
Talked about the circle. We've talked about the triangle. We've talked about the bridge.
So-
We've talked about
Would
horizontality, verticality, and diagonality, and we've talked about curvilinear and the L shape.
So my question is, would the angels, those 2, would it be like a bridge or a radical burst?
Radial burst.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me look at the angle, because it's a diptych and it has 2 parts, right? So we'd have to analyze each part of the composition individually,
Okay.
okay? So if we did, and we talked about this composition, you see that triangulation?
Okay.
All right, so that really could be discussed in relation to like a big triangle.
Okay.
That's an implied triangulation. Over here, I really just see that as maybe curvilinear dominant. There's a lot of curving shapes, organic shapes.
Okay.
So you have to kind of analyze those kind of just individually. If they're side by side, this image and then that image, then we really could reduce it down to 2 centers.
Okay.
Instead of one major configuration. we've got, you know,
Two kind of
two
focal
centers,
points.
instead of tension between them, they're generally, you know, in confrontation with one another. This compared to that, just kind of like this is compared to that. And then the bridge is where you've got a connecting device between two. Here, there's really not a connecting device, there's just one compared to another.
Okay.
Okay, but individually, I see a triangle. Here, I see curvilinear dominance.
So could that be like in my study guide too, and then put two centers
Yep.
as
Mhm.
okay.
Very good.
All right.
Very good.
When is our next test or exam?
About 2.5 weeks.
Okay.
They're all scattered, they're all, excuse me, I take that back. That's over a 16-week semester, hang on.
I could probably look at the
About-
syllabus.
About 2 weeks. The first one was the 10th, 17th, it's probably on the 24th.
24th? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm guessing, yeah, the 24th, because we only have 8 weeks.
Okay.
So I think it's Monday the 24th. You can double check.
Yes, ma'am.
We're on a fast track in summer school, remember?
We are.
Yeah, every day.
Yes, ma'am. I will see you Monday, ma'am. Have a great rest of your day and your weekend.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm sorry about your magazine that was left on the floor.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. I was actually down in Alabama. I didn't even know that museum was even.
Oh, I haven't been to Alabama in a long time, but when next time I go to or go through there, it's gonna be on my bucket list. I wanna see that. I mean,
I
as
actually-
disturbing as it will be, I'd like to
Yeah.
see it.
I'd love to take my family down there.
Yeah, yeah, the Holocaust is something I think everyone should see. The
That
Holocaust
museum
Museum.
was-
But, you know, you don't feel like going out and having a nice lunch afterward. 'Cause
No.
It's a very sobering.
It really
It
is.
just, you know, when you look at stuff like this, the lynching thing, and then of course the Holocaust, it just, you know.
It makes you uneasy.
Well, no, I mean, it makes you constantly amazed at the cruelty that man can
Yeah.
perpetuate. The injustice in the world, the sheer evil in this world.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know, I mean, it just is, what else, is there any other way to explain it? No.
No.
So,
There's not.
anyway, it's,
Oh, looks
somebody's,
like somebody left their bag.
yeah, and their money.
Oh.
Somebody's pocket dumped out, I'll put it up on the desk.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too.
Thanks.